Welcome to the summary of episode 13 of the Reading Finnegans Wake in 200 Sessions podcast. Please subscribe and hit the like button. Okay, let's dive into this. Have you ever heard of a book that's got a reputation for being, well, unreadable? A novel that has totally baffled and fascinated people for nearly a century. Today, we are jumping headfirst into that very puzzle. We're going to try and crack the code of what might just be the most notoriously difficult book ever written, James Joyce's Finnegans Wake. And just to give you a little taste of what we're up against, the part we're looking at today starts like this. I mean, it just looks like total gibberish, doesn't it? This incredibly dense wall of words is exactly why the book has the reputation it does. Which, leads people to ask a very, very reasonable question. For decades, readers, scholars, everybody's been debating this. Is it all just a big prank? Is it a puzzle? Or is it some kind of unparalleled work of genius? But here's the thing. What if I told you that buried deep inside all this linguistic fog, there's a surprisingly simple, almost familiar story? It's basically a where are they now for a group of characters who spread a vicious rumor in an earlier chapter. Joyce is just telling us that a bunch of time has passed and all those people are, well, they're gone. So our mission today is to play literary detective. We're going to sift through all the evidence and figure out what in the world really happened to these guys. Here are our persons of interest, the original crew of gossipmongers. First up, our investigation starts with Hosty. He's the supposed musical genius who actually wrote the slanderous song in the first place. Joyce tells us his story ends like this. He gets this playful nickname, Osty Fosty, and gets a little praise for his talent, but when it comes to what actually happened to him, the trail just goes completely cold. And just like that, our first case is a cold one. Hosty's fate is a total mystery, like a puzzle piece that's just missing. He literally vanishes from the record. Let's see if we have any better luck with our next character, Ahara. All right, so Joyce's description of what happened to him is this absolute whirlwind of confusing names and events. You've got Irish history, some military stuff, and this bizarre, almost Russian-sounding alias. It honestly feels like it's designed to throw us off the scent. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. When we compare the final, crazy text with Joyce's much simpler first draft, that draft basically acts like a Rosetta Stone for us. The whole wild story of Blanko Fusilovna Buklovich, it just boils down to a simple fact. A guy named Buckley enlisted during the Crimean War. And we can actually confirm this by decoding the clues in the text. Joyce mentions O'Hara accepting the Ardries shilling, which is a clear nod to taking the king's shilling, old-timey slang for enlisting. He flew his wild geese, a term for Irish soldiers serving abroad, and ultimately he died in battle. So, case closed on that one. Okay, the trail picks back up with our next guy, Paul Horan. His fate is described with this really strange turn of phrase, right? It connects his literary and criminal aspirations to being thrown into something called a Ridley's. And you guessed it, the complicated text is hiding a simple and, in this case, pretty tragic truth. The first draft just says it plainly. The character, who was originally named Peter Cloran, became an inmate of an asylum. Joyce just obscures this sad reality behind all these layers of wordplay. So the key clue here is a little piece of local Dublin slang. It turns out Ridley's was a common nickname for a specific mental institution, the Richmond Lunatic Asylum. You see, without that little piece of local knowledge, the meaning is completely lost on you. Next on our list is Sordid Sam, and his end is described in a way that is somehow both darkly funny and incredibly brutal. He passed away painlessly, but he was propelled by footblows. It's a classic Joycean contradiction. And this is a brilliant example of how Joyce just wraps a really grim event in layers of wordplay. The simple story is much more direct. The character, originally called Treacle Tom, was basically kicked to death by his roommates. Joyce's final version adds all these puns, but that violent core, it's still there. Are you starting to see the pattern here? Our final character, Langley, is no exception. And you gotta notice the little gender bending, her wife, and this almost cartoonish description of a complete and total vanishing act. So when we deconstruct it, what do we find? Another mysterious, pathetic end. The first draft is crystal clear. Shorty disappeared so completely people thought he'd gone underground. The final version is this linguistic maze, but the meaning is exactly the same. another character just faded into nothing. So, after our little investigation, a really clear picture starts to emerge, right? All the people who spread that nasty rumor have either faded into obscurity or ruin or death. Their petty scandal is just a footnote now, and they themselves are completely forgotten, their own stories twisted and buried. And this brings us to the biggest, most important question of all. Why? Why not just tell the simple story? Why bury it under this avalanche of puns and allusions and foreign words? Well, Joyce actually gives us the answer himself. He describes the book within the book, and he tells us that what we're reading isn't some factual account. No, he says it's a tissue of falsehoods, from top to bottom, written in a way so that nobody could ever get sued for libel. And this is where it all clicks into place. The medium is the message. That linguistic freak fog we talked about, it's not a bug, it's a feature. It's meant to perfectly mirror the fog of time, the way history gets distorted into rumor and legend and just plain misinformation. The way the story is told reflects how unreliable the story itself is. I mean, think about it. Think about the difference between the history you read in a textbook versus the history Joyce gives us here. Textbooks are all about clear, linear facts. Finnegans Wake gives us a messy, foggy, distorted soup of rumor and half-truths, which, let's be honest, is probably a lot closer to how memory and history actually work. So the book isn't just a difficult story. It's a story about the very nature of difficulty itself, the difficulty of ever truly knowing the past or telling a true story when all you have to work with are echoes and distorted fragments. Reading it really is like becoming a literary archaeologist. You're digging through all these layers of language to unearth the human comedy and tragedy that's buried deep inside. Every single word is like a little shard of pottery, a clue to a forgotten world. And this whole thing leaves us with a final, really provocative thought about how we understand the world around us. Joyce was writing about the unreliability of history a century ago, but how much more relevant is that idea today in our own age of information overload and fake news?